Welcome to the Ewing family, Pam Barnes. Now here's a heaping pile of passive aggression. Yeehaw! Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to the season finale of Battle of the Network shows, season 11.
That's right.
It's been a long season.
It has been.
I didn't just dream it, did I?
No, you did not.
No,
I can assure you.
okay.
It's been an epic season.
Yes. And we're going to be talking about Dallas,
Yes, we are.
the TV show,
That's right.
not so much the town.
No, it might come up a little bit, but yes, our
Or the
focus will
football
be
team.
on the TV show, or Larry Dallas from County,
Right?
or Steve Dallas.
Steve Dallas, yeah.
Yes.
Larry Dallas from Three's Company.
His company. Yeah. I would like to talk about. Well, maybe not now.
Yeah.
We'll do another episode on him sometime, maybe.
Right. Which I feel like has been mentioned many, many, many times on the show. In TV guide games and
Yeah.
just, that was on at this. That's why that show failed.
Yeah, because it was up against
on.
Dallas.
I'm sure we talked about it a little bit in our Dynasty episode.
Yeah.
But it took a long time to get around to it.
It did, and it's worthy, I think, of being a season finale. It's just a huge part of television history, and like you said, it touched on so many aspects of our era. And it's interesting, too, because it started in the 1970s, spanned the entire 1980s, but actually ended in the early 90s.
Yeah.
But I think of it kind of as I don't know. I don't
think of it as 80s.
You do? Yeah. See, I think of it, okay, I see it as straddling the 70s and 80s. So I think of it in what we call kind of our sweet spot, maybe of like 75 to 85.
Yeah.
I find it perfectly in there.
Yes.
Because it seems like, in what we're going to talk about, it definitely of its time in the 70s, but it grew into something that almost, epitomized the 80s as well.
Yeah.
It's all of it, I guess.
Right, yeah.
It's good television, right? It brings in so much.
Right.
It's of its time, and
Well,
we had...
maybe it was predicting the 80s in a way.
Yeah.
And its focus on the self.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we've wanted to. You and I professionally had some relationship with Dallas
A
years
little
ago.
bit, yeah.
Okay, I think I might have encountered it a little bit more than you did back in those days.
Yeah, I don't think I...
It used to be on. It was on SoapNet for a while.
Uh-huh.
And then I think it was on the Nashville network as well. And I remember seeing some episodes around that time and thinking, I'm kind of getting into this. Like, it kind of pulled me in a little bit, despite, or maybe because of the serialized nature.
Yeah. Now, I find it in the episodes I watched,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't see a ton, and they were early going, and it felt way less structurally soapy than Dynasty. Like, I remember the Dynasty episode kind of lamenting how little really happened in that episode. Whereas a lot of these episodes are the ones I happen to watch. I mean, they have the threads going through them that, go on to other episodes or came from other episodes. But there's always like a central story that gets resolved too.
Right.
So that you can jump around and actually still feel like you know where you are. And the pacing too is a little different.
I think it became more like other nighttime soaps as it went on. But in the early days, I think there was more to that. It was always meant to be self-serialized, but I also, they were telling some self-contained story elements as well.
And maybe just like more focused and not like a bunch of scenes that go on and on.
Not a lot of treading water.
Yeah.
That you see like in a lot of daytime soaps, and even, like you mentioned, some of the nighttime soaps. Yeah. I think things move pretty quickly, and to its credit. And, again, I think it's important to note that we had those other shows, Dynasty, Falcon Crest, Knots Landing, and many direct imitators of Dallas. We've had so many of those imitators, but Dallas was the first of these. And nighttime soaps were not a thing until Dallas. There was Peyton Place, and then went years before this being a thing. And, from what I understand, part of it was because of the movements against violence, and, on Starsky and Hutch, Charlie's Angels, things like that. CBS was looking for more like just a drama, and that kind of inspired them to, have this show developed. And it grew into one of the biggest shows that CBS had, and one of the biggest things on television. But they established a lot of the rules for nighttime soaps, and kind of paved the way for other shows to come after it.
Yeah, and spun off Knots Landing. Falcon Crest was not in the same world, right? Or was it sort of?
That was like correct.
But still, they had 3 successful
Yeah.
nighttime soaps, and
Right.
Knots Landing lasted into the 90s.
Yeah, Knights Landing was on. I mean, Dallas ran 14 seasons, and I
Yeah.
think Knights Landing was close to it, but it's pretty amazing. What a huge run.
Yeah.
And you know who the only actor who was in every episode of Dallas?
I do. Larry Hagman.
That's right, Larry Hagman. Yeah.
Wait, is my Larry Hagman and George W. Bush? I think it is. Okay.
Yeah, so the show was huge, and we were discussing, what episode, how should we tackle this? Should we do like Dynasty, where we kind of just did like a random episode to see if we could figure out what's happening? There's been other famous episodes, the Who Shot JR, and by the way, I have my
I saw
my vintage I Shot JR button, and I'm
Yeah.
wearing a shirt that
Yes.
my tag team partner Mike got me with the Ewing boys on it.
Yeah.
The main Ewing boys.
It's very cool, I gotta say. It even looks better in person than when I bought it from TeePublic. It looks very much like something you would have gotten at a mall kiosk.
Yes.
Back, which I remember there being like Who Shot JR shirts like that. But from TeePublic, where you can also get Battle on the Network shows merchandise.
Thank you. That's right. So yeah, we were talking about like what approach to take. And
Yeah.
we usually don't go with the most famous episode of a show.
Right.
That's just we'll do something maybe that's representative of something that interests us. But this time, proving once again this is the most interactive season of Battle of the Network shows yet. We put it to our fans, our listeners, and asked them to vote. And I think, not that I'm unhappy with the result, Mike, but I think we might have gone too far this season. We might have been too interactive this season. I mean, having people pick the episode we discussed, that's a little, I don't know. I'm a little uneasy about it.
Oh, yeah.
We might need to pull back next season.
Right.
But they voted for the season premiere.
Yes.
Or the series premiere.
Yeah. And not the other options were Who Shot JR.
The resolution of that.
The resolution, and Bobby stepping out of the shower.
Yeah.
The resolution of that too, right? Not, or does that, I forget, does that that happens at the end of...
It happens at the very end of season 9.
Yeah.
It was the cliffhanger.
Right, yeah.
That had people talking, and then the first episode of season 10 is where it's established that it was a dream.
Yeah.
And man, what an audacious thing. I mean,
Right.
that was. I mean, they essentially wiped out a whole season of storytelling.
Because they killed him, right?
They had killed him off, and I believe Patrick Duffy had actually asked them to kill him off so that he wouldn't be tempted to come back to the show.
And they found a way.
Yeah. And also, the guy that created Dallas was a man named David Jacobs, but Leonard Katzman was the producer. I think he said before that David Jacobs created it, but I considered it my show. And I think it's mutual. Like David Jacobs, says he kind of stepped away after he came up with like the basic premise.
Right.
And wrote like a couple of the first episodes. And season 9 was the one season where Leonard Katzman was not like really hands-on. So it's kind of a weird thing. And like I think he was instrumental in bringing back Patrick Duffy, and Larry Hagman was as well. But it's kind of weird, like in the sense that like it's this new guy, this guy taking over, and like, okay, everything that happened while I was gone, that's not good anymore. But you could argue that was the only way to do it.
Yeah. Other than the twin they never knew about or something.
Or don't, I guess the thing would be just don't kill him off in the first place. Don't write yourself into a corner. Or don't have it so conclusive. Maybe what they should have done is made it seem like he was dead, and then he could have had amnesia for a year and wandered around. And I mean, there's all sorts of ways they could have brought it back. But boy, talk about something being mocked at the time. I remember just that was huge news.
Yeah.
I think they kept that a secret until it aired. I think it surprised everybody. Although that might have been leaked out in the tabloids. I think maybe the fact that he had filmed something, although I don't think she was on the set with him, Victoria Principal was, but I think maybe that got out, but nobody knew what the explanation would be until the show came back, I think. I know that my mom watched Dallas for many years. I don't know how long, but I think like in its prime she was watching it.
Right.
I did not really watch it when I was on.
I'm sure that divided fans too.
I think so, yeah.
Like if people didn't like that season, then yay.
Yeah.
But if you did, then they just took it away.
Yeah. I think there were some whole character arcs that people enjoyed that were just essentially wiped out by doing that.
And then I think Victoria Principal left.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the season 10, right?
Not too long after that, yeah. After they made a big deal of bringing them back together and establishing that and as we see in the first episode, it seems like they were always intended to be the heart of the show. Yeah. And that relationship. And to me, I did watch that episode where Bobby comes back, and it's just weird because he had a relationship they were building with another. Or no, I'm sorry. She had something going on. It's getting very confusing. But there was a storyline where there was somebody who's essentially they had a Victoria Principal replacement that looked like Pam, after she left, in the later seasons, and it's like it just didn't seem right. It seems like, but they have to comment on the show, which is sort of interesting. Like he had a relationship with Priscilla Presley's character, but he almost is obsessed with this person that reminds him of Pam, which is kind of interesting, I guess. But this points out something that I'll say this right here. Normally, I'll try to watch like a big assortment of episodes, and I wanted to do that for Dallas, but you know what happened was I started watching season 1 a while ago and kind of got away from it a while, but I'm kind of enjoying the serialized nature of it so much that I actually find myself not wanting to watch many of the other episodes. Not so much to spoil them, but because I just don't want to jump around so much. And I think at least the first couple seasons, I kind of want to finish watching like the second season actually in order.
I didn't even get out of the second season.
Really? Yeah.
But I watched the first couple and then the first couple of the second season and another one
Yeah.
that one of our listeners recommended. And
Yeah.
then ran out of time because I didn't start when you did. It started last week. But
Well, I kind of started watching the show and thinking, oh, I'll just watch it slowly, and then we watch other things, and
Yeah.
and things for the podcast, and I just kind of got out of it. But it does interest me. I did jump around a little bit. I watched the last season episode, and it felt like a totally different show,
Yeah.
and not in a good way.
Right.
I mean, you had like Sasha Mitchell, and like he was on like Step by Step later with Duffy, I think. But
Oh.
he was playing like the JR's son.
Yeah.
You know, and like these these newer characters that just didn't resonate with me, and it's
Right.
like I think this show had a really strong peak, and I just don't think I'd be interested in watching like some of those later seasons, like into the late '80s. Like to me, it's like the late '70s, early '80s.
Yeah.
And kind of like what was going on with like oil, and it just seems to resonate more coming from that era.
And I assume the more it goes on, the more the stories get soapy too.
Yeah.
Because that might have been the most shocking thing to me about watching these early episodes is that they're pretty grounded.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a rich family and there's backbiting and all of that kind of stuff, but it's not outrageous.
Yeah, there's elements of sleaze,
Yes.
but it's not like evil twin territory.
No.
And like zombies and things like
Right.
that.
Or even kidnappings and murder or something.
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah, it's almost like, and it makes like JR,
Yeah.
who's like, one of the great TV villains of all time. He's the fact that he does stuff that's sort of identifiable or hints at things.
Mm-hmm.
It almost makes it grounds his evilness, in more reality and makes him more effective because he's not totally over the top.
Right.
He's just like, you could actually see this guy. Oh man, this SOB is really going to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and I think it might have taken a while to find itself, and this is something I guess we'll get into. But it seems like it had a lot of the elements like right from the beginning.
Yeah.
I was pretty confident of what it was going to be, and but 14 seasons that kind of surprised me. I didn't realize it had been on that long, but now it makes sense.
Yeah.
That when I think about it, it's like, oh yeah, okay, it started around the time Simpsons was still in the air, and it was still in the air, and just
Yeah. Simpsons, of course. They're Who Shot Mr. Burns.
Yeah, that's right. Well, maybe we should talk briefly about the Who Shot JR, because that was kind of where the show.
I mean, that's fascinating because it's as young children. I certainly was aware of it.
Yeah.
It was just it was in the news. It was, again, people wearing T-shirts and maybe, I don't know, somebody's parents talking about it or something, but it was just, everybody knew about it.
Yeah. So it was like a cliffhanger at the end of season 3, I believe.
Yeah.
And then I think it was like the 4th episode in season 4, they actually revealed the answer. So they strung it along for several
Because there
episodes.
were some contract things with Larry Hagman as part of it, I think.
Yeah. Larry Hagman.
And there was a writer's strike?
Yeah, this would have been. Yeah, I think this would have been because the actors' strike was the next year. It was like we're talking about like 1979 to 1980, and that episode where they revealed whodunit was like became the biggest, most watched like regular episode of a show of all time until the MASH finale beat that record.
Right.
But yeah, everybody was into it. It was a true phenomenon, and after that, I mean, that was the peak of the show.
Mm-hmm.
But it had a run. It was so in season 3, it became a top 10 show. So we're talking like 1979, 1980, and then for 5 years in a row, it was either number 1 or number 2, essentially trading places with 60 Minutes. And it started as a Sunday show and had a short period of time on Saturdays and Sundays, but then like midway through the 3rd season, it moved to Fridays at 10, and then this spent the rest of the decade and the rest of its run either at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock on Friday nights. So it dominated for years, and that's something. And we're talking 357 episodes and several television movies afterwards. That too.
And a revival series.
That's right. Yeah, on TNT. About like 10, 15 years, no, maybe 10 years ago.
10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's been in reruns over the years. And I'm not sure if it might be the kind of show because of it's so serialized that doesn't hold up well in reruns. But when SoapNet was still around,
Yeah.
why wouldn't it show
Perfect
that?
for that, yeah.
And I thought it was probably a pretty good fit on CMT or Nashville Network, whatever it was at the time, probably Nashville Network. But just in general, I wanted to mention it didn't seem to get a lot of critical praise, and it didn't win a lot of awards, which maybe isn't surprising. But so for the Emmys, it got 21 nominations, which sounds like a lot, but it was on 14 years.
Yeah.
And it was like the number 1 show for so many years. You'd think maybe it would get a few more. It only had 4 wins, and I think the only big major win that I found was Barbara Bel Geddes, the matriarch of the Ewings. She won Outstanding Lead Actress, but it didn't win very many like Golden Globes either or anything like that. It was just not like an award. It just wasn't that kind of show, and maybe it was fine with that.
Seems like the Golden Globes would have eaten it up.
Yeah, especially Larry Hagman. You can
Yeah.
see him like winning every year.
Yeah. People's Choice Awards, maybe?
Yeah, I think it actually did win a couple of People's Choice Awards, which were probably on CBS at the time. Maybe not coincidentally, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm just amazed that. And one other thing, I was just kind of looking briefly at how long it was on, and it was on so long that I was just looking at like the cast list and just people that I never knew or totally forgot were on the show. Like Susan Lucci was on for like a year. Ian McShane.
Yes, I did see his name. I think Sue Ellen marries him, and moves to England to leave the show.
And Art Hindle?
Art Hindle.
Art Hindle was like a regular, I think, or semi-regular for like a year or two, like in the late 80s, I believe.
Wow. Wasn't he on some other soap like this? Didn't we talk about
Yes,
I'm
just so blown away by the fact that he was on Dallas.
I don't know. I don't know if I can handle that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Before we get into the specific episode, I think we should give some props to one of our friends of the show, John Holland. Mm-hmm. But a good cowboy name, John Holland. Wouldn't it be a good...
That is a good cowboy
I think it would. But he had mentioned, just Dallas. I think he had suggested it, I think before this season, but maybe when we had already had like the last season book. But I asked him if he, wanted to share any thoughts, and he responded. And he started, thanks for the opportunity to share my thoughts on Dallas. Even though I've lived in the Dallas area since 2005 and Southfork Ranch is 15 miles from my house. That's pretty cool. I never watched the show until a few years ago. I've only seen the first 2 seasons, but there's a lot to recommend. He talked about some specific episodes, which we didn't go with because we decided to go the poll route. So, we thank you, John. But
they were good recommendations.
Yes, yes. But he gave us a few thoughts on how the show compares to the real city of Dallas, which I thought was interesting. He says, first, the geography is spot on. Whenever characters mention they're going somewhere, whether it is across town or several cities away, it always makes sense. It's something that would resonate with you, Mike.
Yes,
it may not matter much to the plots, but I've never thought, wait a minute, you can't get there from here. The Texas accents are pretty good, too, especially Hagman, which makes sense since he is a native Texan. I know the show wasn't filmed that often in Dallas itself, but it has been fun trying to spot recognizable places and buildings. I don't know what downtown Dallas was actually like in the late 70s, but there isn't nearly the amount of pedestrian traffic that you see in the show. Also, there's an awful lot of dining outdoors for a city that is very hot for most of the year. That's interesting. When you guys talked about Heart to Heart, you said that it doesn't rely on guest stars very much, and I think that is true of Dallas also. The problem with some episodes is that a guest star comes in to make trouble for one of the Ewings, but by the episode's end, either JR or Bobby has gotten rid of them and nothing really changes. The better episodes are the ones with the entire Ewing clan, and, I agree with all that.
According to the end credits of the first couple seasons, filmed entirely on location in Texas. And then I think they stopped doing that.
Especially like the first set, like the show aired as 5 episodes, a miniseries in the spring. Mm-hmm. And then it was picked up for the fall. And those ones in particular, like everything was shot on location. Yeah. Some of it, I think they had different like sets that they built and stuff. But yeah, so at the beginning, they made an effort to do a lot of like location shooting, which is cool.
And even an episode where Bobby and Pam go to Las Vegas. Oh. It's Dallas. I mean, they show some Vegas shots, kind of stock footage stuff, and then they show them in a hotel, and then like they actually pan down on like there's a big tower thing. I don't know what that's called, but probably the Lone Star Tower or something. But I'm like, wait, that's like in the credits and stuff. Yeah. That's out of Vegas.
Yeah, and I think it was in this first like episode, they actually even shot the interiors like in the Ewing, in the Southfork Ranch, and the household. They shot that like in an actual like ranch house or something. Yeah, pretty cool. I mean, they put some effort into it, and as far as that first batch of episodes goes, the first one was did pretty well, and then they had a couple of episodes that were not so good, and then the 5th episode, though, it scored pretty big, but it was against like reruns. I think the main thing was like the competition it was up against, so it wasn't like a huge no-brainer, but it did well enough that they said, okay, yeah, we'll make a series out of this. I guess originally it was the network that said 1 episode probably isn't enough to set this up, so let's make 5 episodes, run it as a mini series, and if it does well, we'll turn it into a real series. This particular episode, this is unprecedented. Amazing. So it aired April 2nd, 1978, which means for the very first time in Battle of the Network show's history, we're doing a full episode devoted to an episode that aired on the same night as an episode we previously discussed. Another epic television show, another long-running saga, another iconic portrayal of the American West.
Another show that was the buzz of the entire country.
Yes. Not necessarily a critical darling, but a popular favorite.
Yes.
That show, of course, is...
Well, it's the one that inspired the one summer where everyone was asking, who kissed Mel's grits?
That's right. We're talking about Alice.
Yeah.
So I've already told everybody what else aired on that night. But just to recap, maybe I'll just do it real quick. April 2nd, 1978. This episode is Digger's Daughter, the very first Dallas ever. CBS had 60 Minutes, Rhoda, On Our Own, Alice and Dallas there. NBC had The Wide World Disney, Part 1 of The Barefoot Executive. We talked about that before, when they split up shows. They split up movies, I mean. And then after that, Love's Dark Ride, which was like a movie. It's kind of like the NBC big event kind of thing they were doing. So it was like a big deal movie or something.
And Barefoot Executive still not on Disney+.
It's amazing. Amazing. I don't get that. ABC had the series premiere of Young Pioneers, which was a series set in the 1870s, I think by the executive producers of The Waldens, and an airing of High Plains Drifter with Clint Eastwood. So that was Sunday night in Dallas, 10 p.m. The nation is introduced to the Ewings and Southfork Ranch.
So, should we run down the cast here for people who don't know? You already mentioned Barbara Bel Geddes.
Yeah, and one thing that's cool is like they're in alphabetical order at the beginning. I like that.
Yeah, And what was she known for?
She was primarily, I think she had done some stage work. She'd been out of the business for a while. I think she took care of like a sick husband, and then he died and kind of left her kind of in the lurch. And
Okay.
I think she said something like she needed the money when she took this position. You know, took this
So
role.
she's playing Miss Ellie.
Yeah, and I think her and her husband were like, I think the first two that they cast, basically. They kind of knew them right away.
So speaking of Jim Davis, he's playing Jock Ewing, and of course, creator of Garfield.
Of course. Yes.
Also, I have a theory about not Jim Davis in particular, but that when Billy Bob Thornton was working on his character Carl from Sling Blade, that he had watched a lot of Dallas.
You think so?
What episode? The election episode, where they're conniving to ruin Cliff Barnes' election, and they do. And Pam is all upset about it. He's it's politics.
Yes.
Anyway. Yeah. All right. My best gets with mustard on him.
I got this book, Dallas: The Complete Story of the World's Favorite Primetime Soap by Barbara A. Curran. And she got access to tons of people involved with the show. Very, very cool book. In that book, somebody mentions, maybe it's Leonard Katzman or somebody else, but mentions that Jim Davis, he did a lot of like casual profanity. And they said they had like a certain limit, but he would like add a lot of like mild cussing or to his dialogue. Yeah. And it was all him. And then he said he would pretty much put them over their limit like every episode. Nice little tidbit about Jim Davis.
Yeah. And what was
he had been in some like westerns and
yeah.
somebody I think in an actual book sort of talks about him as like almost a poor man's John Wayne. Like you might need a John Wayne type, but if you can't afford him, you get Jim Davis or whatever. And I think meant it in a nice way, but he was in like I think Stories of the Century, like some western anthologies, and was well known to TV audiences at the time, if a little bit past his prime, but appropriate for this kind of patriarch role of Jock Ewing.
Right, and of course he passed away during the 4th season.
Yeah, not too far into the run. Yeah,
Patrick Duffy, the man from Atlantis.
Yeah, coming off Man from Atlantis.
Yeah.
And he was a pretty big deal. Even though Man from Atlantis didn't last, he was considered a pretty big get for Dallas, I think, at the time. He was very interested in doing this.
And they made a joke to you in an email about the episodes where Peter Aykroyd? David Aykroyd.
Exo-Man, yeah.
Exo-Man playing Gary Ewing.
Yeah.
And, of course, his romantic interest is Joan Van Ark, who was the voice of Spider-Woman. And then I was thinking about the day, and like, and the Man from Atlantis.
Oh, yeah.
What a powerhouse group of heroes.
That's right, yeah. Man, all three of them, yeah.
Yeah.
All they're missing is Alan Fudge.
Right.
Is their like support.
Yeah.
Get Alan Fudge and Burgess Meredith in there and get a real team.
So Larry Hagman?
Yep, Larry Hagman. And interesting, like I Dream of Jeannie, of course, was, but he'd been in several other shows like since then. And I think he was like the highest paid member of the cast, but he was not like so much elevated that, and he was a dominant personality. It seems like he was a really fun guy to be around.
Yeah.
But he would also do some like mischievous things or whatever. Like there's an anecdote where he's talking to Sue Ellen, Linda Gray would play Sue Ellen, and kind of says like very early on, he was in a car with her and said, it was terrible the way you played that or whatever, like in one of the first episodes. And she was like distraught or whatever. Yeah. But she got over it or whatever. And then like years later, she finally saw it like in a rerun or something like that and said, she actually played it pretty well. And she went up to him and said, hey, you remember that when you told me? And he said, oh, yeah, you were great in that. She said, well, why did you tell me I was terrible? And he said, I just wanted to show you who was boss. But that's kind of a weird story, but it seems like he brought like a van to like when they were shooting the thing and just like they would drive around into town to go get food and stuff, and like just seemed like he was just like everybody to have a good time and was like a fun guy to be around, people say. Notwithstanding that one anecdote there.
And then in this, a couple of cast members are not full cast members yet. So, but Victoria Principal is, of course.
Yeah, and it seemed like the show was built around her. Like
she
David
really
Jacobs
seems like
talks about like the concept. Originally, CBS actually wanted a show built around Linda Evans, and Knots Landing it seems like was actually created before Dallas,
right?
But it went on the air later.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, yeah. Knots Landing. Linda Evans would have been like a star of what would have became Knots Landing,
right?
Later.
Yeah.
So Victoria Principal was the one that they had in mind. And did you know about like her background just before Dallas? She became an agent.
Yeah.
And essentially served as her own agent, like when joining Dallas.
Yeah, I do want to. There's some movie she was in. I want to see something, The Vigilante Brothers or something like that. I forget who's in it now.
Yeah,
it looked ridiculous.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
She put herself up for the role.
Interesting.
I guess she just wanted the role so bad. And I think first of all, you mentioned recently Stephanie Kramer being one of the most beautiful women on TV. Victoria Principal.
Yeah, that's something I get watching these old Dallas episodes. I get an appreciation. Like we've talked about our holy trinity of brunettes, but I think it was just because I wasn't watching Dallas at the time that I didn't include her. But yeah, Victoria Principal.
I think she's really good in the role.
Yeah,
it does seem like like it's a lot of it's built around her. Like she's the entry point character.
Yes, exactly. And she'd been on some other, she'd made appearances on other shows and stuff. But I mean, it's kind of funny that she had actually started acting like 10 years earlier. I think she was like 28 or something. But she wasn't totally like new to the business, although which you might assume,
right?
Based on the fact. And I think they probably underestimated her a little bit because she was like model attractive and stuff, and she wound up making this role hers and running with it.
And then Charlene Tilton, who probably was new to the business.
Yeah, she was. I think she was like 17.
Yeah,
and
going on 40.
Yeah. And in the pilot, I think Steve Canale, I think I saw a quote where he's talking about she looks like she's like 10 or 12, and this is going to look terrible for me.
Right.
He said as soon as he realized that, he was like, oh boy, my mom's not going to like this or something like that. And then, but yeah, she's definitely playing this jailbait character. And especially in the early episodes, like I think I've gone on, it seems like they've gotten away from her a little bit as they go more into season 2. But in the early episodes, she's like a huge player in all the,
Yeah. And so then Steve Canale and Linda Gray and
Ken Kirchhoff,
yes, are listed as kind of guest stars at the end.
Yeah, and Linda Gray is Sue Ellen, who becomes a huge character.
Yeah,
she hardly does anything in this first episode.
Right, she just kind of acts snide.
And Ken Kirchhoff played Cliff.
Yeah,
and he and Ray Krebs, they actually were up for the same parts actually. And I think Ken Kirchhoff wanted to play Ray. He wanted to be the cowboy. He'd been like playing like lawyers and doctors and like guys like that, and he wanted to. Yeah. So he really pushed to get the other role, but he didn't get that one. No. He got Cliff.
Get the lawyer.
Yeah. the outsider.
Yeah, but at least a lawyer from humble beginnings.
Yeah.
And Tina Louise.
That's right. Yeah.
Is Julie, JR's assistant. That may be other things.
Yeah, and there's a scene like early in the pilot where it just kind of it's interesting because like he just kind of puts his hand casually on her leg.
Yeah,
and just kind of says something without saying it right there, just the way he does it, But yeah, that was interesting to see her in there. I'd forgotten that she had any involvement, and I'm not sure how long she was on, but
I think one of the episodes John recommended, which I didn't see, but involved her. Maybe she came back and because she knew all the dirt.
That's right. In the first set of episodes, she's a major character.
Maybe when they stopped being in the office so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's your cast pretty much. Oh, and David Wayne.
Oh, that's right.
Is Digger.
Digger, yes. Pam's ne'er-do-well, did well earlier, now kind of a drunkard.
Yeah, that's before he was in the state.
Yeah.
Wasn't there David Wayne in the state? I'm sorry.
Different spelling, yes.
Oh,
yes,
different spelling?
Right. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yes. So the episode opens on a Mercedes convertible with the license plate Ewing 4 and rolling down those Texas roads. Well, it opens with the opening credits.
Yeah, we should say something about the opening credits, how great they are.
They are. Now, these first episodes don't have the classic Dallas logo yet.
No.
But they do have the song. Which I love that it's like both orchestral and disco.
Yeah. I mean, it's so 1978. It's like perfect for the time.
And all the shots of Dallas and all the like split screen things.
Yeah.
Which having the split screens combined with all of those like helicopter shots really reminds me of like those like Disney World kind of. I think like our Six Flags had some of these, like those short movies.
Oh,
where like go to Canada or whatever.
Right.
There would be all these split screens. And
stuff. And they'd be showing off like big screens and like these, like kind of almost Cinerama kind of effects and stuff like that. Yeah. That's good. It gives it like a big sweep, like an epic feel to it right from the beginning, which it's interesting. And that's one thing that's interesting about the show. You get this epic thing, and ultimately you got this like intimate family drama. And sometimes that's one thing I wonder about of the course of the show, like how, and it kind of comes and goes, like how big are the Ewings and how important are they as independent oil producers? And they kind of address that at times, but you start off and like, man, this is like a big deal. This is Dallas, this is Texas. It's big.
It's big.
It's great. It's a great beginning.
Yeah. And I enjoy like when they're showing the cast members that they have split screens there.
Yeah.
So you get 3 shots.
Yes.
So we open and there's this couple who we learn are Bobby and Pam, and they've just gotten married. Bobby's telling her, now you're a Ewing, which seems it's a casual line, but every episode I've seen, like they're so obsessed with being a Ewing. Yeah, what that means, you're a Ewing.
Yeah.
And really, and kind of like he says something later that fits this more. It's not that, you're sort of part of that family when you get married, but you're still part of your family.
Mm-hmm.
But really, you're part of the new family you've created with the person you've married.
Yeah.
You're not just, it's just, they just have such a high view of themselves.
Even Bobby, who's like
Yeah.
ostensibly like the hero and the good guy in this, but it kind of also foreshadows discussions they'll have later in the series about like her role and what she's going to be, because he doesn't really want her working.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to be just a Ewing wife staying at the ranch, you know.
Right.
She wants to do other stuff and have her own things.
Yeah. Which I'll just go, why are they all living in the same house?
Yeah.
Why? You have money. And she has a nice apartment in Dallas.
Right.
Multiple, at least one bedroom, maybe more. Why not live there instead of living in a room?
Yeah, it's just all assumed
Yeah.
that they're going to live on the and even JR points out like his apartment that he and Sue Ellen have.
Yeah.
But Sue Ellen seems to always be hanging around in the main house with
Right.
you know,
Yeah. Why wouldn't they?
with Miss Ellie.
And I think in later seasons they're in the house.
Yeah.
Because there's some, he walks out on the balcony in his bathrobe or something.
That's right. Yeah.
And it is the exterior is huge and you can see some big room. But again, it feels a little cramped.
Yeah, I agree.
Like those sitting rooms and stuff just feel closed in. Maybe that's intentional.
It seems like it's like they have an old fashioned way of looking at things. It's like maybe they've grown up here and that's just the way it is. But
Right.
it doesn't even occur to them at this point to you could build on here and make this place twice as big.
Yeah. And maybe Sue Ellen say, why can't we move out, Jay?
Yeah.
Well, we got a swimming pool here.
Yeah.
Honey, what else do you need?
Yeah.
Plenty of booze, and what you believe her character had drinking problems.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure JR likes her being
Oh, yeah.
isolated at the ranch.
I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
She can't get into mischief.
And by the way, and kind of echoing what we were talking about earlier, Pam has the very first line in the show too.
Uh-huh.
I forget what it is, but
Yeah.
but it's symbolic that she's the first one we hear from. That the show literally begins with Pamela Ewing or
Yeah.
Pamela
Right.
Barnes Ewing, whatever.
Yeah. And they've just gotten married and kind of impulsively. So the next scene begins. It's a TV and Cliff Barnes, and we don't know his relationship yet to Pam, but he's a lawyer working for state senators, and they're grilling people about Ewing oil. And we've already heard this Ewing name, so this indicates that maybe the Ewings are shady.
Mm-hmm.
And that JR is watching it in his office, and he's very unhappy. And Dean Louise is there, and he's kind of hoping Daddy isn't watching. Of course, Jock is watching and calls up. And,
Phone rings.
Where's Bobby? He wants Bobby's job apparently is to glad hand politicians and buy them off with favors, and
he's pretty good at it apparently.
Yeah, and enjoys it.
Yeah,
it's people work.
Yeah.
He needs him down in Austin right away. So we go back to Bobby and Pam, and that's where we find out a little bit more about his job, and then we see Jock going into the barn at their ranch looking for Ray Krebs, and turns out Lucy. Now we don't know who Lucy is yet, but their granddaughter hasn't been going to school. He wants Ray to drive her to school from now on, make sure she gets there. And,
Ray's like the foreman of the ranch, I guess.
Yeah.
But they seem to rely on him to do all kinds of stuff.
Right. And I believe I saw later gets revealed he's a illegitimate Ewing.
Yes, he is, which makes these scenes particularly creepy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, jeez.
of him canoodling with with Lucy.
Yeah, so that's where first we find out that, Jock, he's been dating someone, the Barnes girl, and Jock wants him to put some pressure on her about Cliff causing trouble. And then I think we cut away to Pam and Bobby, and she's encouraging Bobby to get involved with the business in Dallas rather than doing this.
Yeah.
And then we come back and we see that Lucy and Ray are messing around.
Yeah, up in the hayloft.
Yeah. And she just finds all this funny. And really didn't like watching scenes with her.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the acting. I mean, the acting's okay, but I didn't like that character. And yet I really enjoyed the reunion episodes with her parent, with Gary and Val. So
yeah.
which she's an important part of.
I think that kind of helped them find that character is bring those characters into the story, letting her go through that and kind of seeing where she comes from, because she just seems like even more than a brat. She seems like downright evil in some of these early episodes.
A vamp.
Yeah.
But she thinks it's funny that he used to date Pam. Is this where she's like, say his name?
Yeah.
Say her name.
Like
call me your name.
Call her. Yeah, it's very bizarre.
Yeah.
You see the manipulative side of her right now.
And then Bobby and Pam arrive at at Southfork and they tell Miss Ellie the news. And it's a little hard to read, but I don't think she's too happy about it.
Yeah. I mean, she's stunned. And yeah, what a way to find out this news.
Yeah. So then she calls up Jock and JR and tell them, you better get home. Bobby got married. And they're like, is she anybody? And she's anybody.
That's right.
And then the next scene is the cocktail hour before dinner.
Yeah, with like everybody sitting around. And...
Yeah, right. And even that, so I think this is the first scene we see with Sue Ellen. But they're all there. They're, dressed up.
Yeah.
They've got clothes for dinner. Lucy's like reclining on the top of the couch like a cat. And
yeah. That's right.
Bobby's explaining, that there had been when they pulled up too, there was a thing where Lucy and Ray were watching them through binoculars. And he said something. He had brought her to barbecues and she's like, oh, yeah, well, you were getting south. They were getting familiar or something.
Yeah.
But I guess they ran into each other in New Orleans and ended up getting hitched. And then Jock is like, he's just, can you talk to that brother of yours? And Miss Ellie's like, oh, we don't talk about business at this hour.
Yeah. Yeah, he's that's his way of welcoming her to the family.
Yeah.
So.
And Jared and Lucy, they're already causing trouble. Like Ray comes in for some reason, and Lucy's like, well, aren't you going to kiss the bride?
Yeah. And Bobby's like, go right ahead. The weird thing about this episode is like right now, you don't see any, there's very little acknowledgement from Bobby that Ray and Pam had a thing at this point.
Yeah.
And it seems like it should be a little bit awkward.
Right.
And you'd think that he would be, Bobby's very self-assured.
Yes.
Which we find out later, he's not, there's things he gets hung up about, but I guess his history with Ray is not one of them. It's not one of those things. But to me, it's kind of weird. And it shows how impulsive it is that Ray was the one that actually brought her to the ranch in the first place for the barbecues.
Yeah, maybe just Bobby's like, I'm Bobby Ewing, and he's a Krebs.
He's a hired hand.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
And then JR offers to show Pam their little house that we mentioned. And this is like a great JR scene.
It really
is. It's like all the JR stuff in one, or almost all of it.
I think it's testament to how good the screenplay is in this first episode, because it's setting up information for us while also establishing like JR and what he's trying to do with these characters and stuff. It's very very well done.
Yeah. So it starts out and he's he's being very friendly, and then he kind of explains the thing with Gary that he was we get a little bit but not too much, but that he's not there, and then he just suddenly like, Cliff put you up to this.
Yeah.
He just turns.
Yeah.
And then he offers to like buy her off.
Right.
And then he threatens her to say, he's like, when you get run off, and surely you will.
Yeah.
You're not going to get anything. I mean, I guess he assumes she's either there to cause trouble for their family or as a gold digger.
Yeah.
And she just loves Bobby.
Right. And he just, like assumes that that's the way he sees the world.
Yes.
Like he just can't conceive that it's like actual love, and not that he would care if it was.
Right.
But at this point, yeah, he just sees her as a threat one way or another.
He's all about self-preservation.
Yeah.
Which there's that election episode when Pam is yelling at him. She says something like, well, one day I'm going to use all your tactics on you to defend her family or something like that. Yeah, no, you won't. You'll just do it for yourself. Just like us. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Like it's Ayn Randian or something.
Right.
I can't imagine him reading a book. But
yeah. And they set up something else that'll become important later on. Like it's brief, but he says something, I forget exactly what it is he says, but she asks if Sue Ellen's pregnant.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, no, not yet. But he makes it clear that it kind of establishes what's going to be a thing where he wants to have an heir.
Yes.
And Pamela and Bobby instantly become rivals to JR and Sue Ellen as far as like possibly creating another Ewing, another generation.
That's right. He doesn't want, they got to have their baby first.
Right. So there's that too, you know, is kind of on JR's mind.
Right.
Probably in the back of his mind. Right.
Yeah. Now. And he doesn't, this scene, he's very sure of himself, but there are other scenes in other episodes too, where that's what I like about his performance. Like he's arrogant and he's vile and all of that, but there are also these moments, little flashes of like real, almost like self-loathing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like before he puts on before the wheels start turning to plot, there's often a look of worry.
Yeah. There's a very good one later in this actual very episode.
Scene with Jock.
Yeah. And that's well said.
Which, might say something about living under Jock Ewing, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got 4 sons, I guess, but 3 sons, and at least 2 of them have a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jock's not an easy man.
Yeah, and then I think JR's just trying to live up.
And this is not even getting into the whole history and with him and Digger,
right?
Which they'll sort of develop later. But
yeah,
who knows? There's stuff in his past too.
So right now, it mostly just seems like he's just a tough kind of father, and maybe that's hard to deal with.
And JR is partly what's turned JR into what he is, I guess. That sense of ruthlessness.
Actually, the next scene is the one with Jock.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on in this scene too.
So Jock's sitting outside smoking. apparently he's not supposed to do. And, JR tells him what he did. And Jock is mad at him.
Yeah.
For not being subtle.
Yeah.
And Jared, "Oh, why do I need to be subtle?" And he says, like, lack of it turns competitors into enemies and enemies into fanatics.
Got a point.
And then they can hear Bobby and Pam upstairs laughing a lot. And the implication is they're up to they're doing what new couples do.
Uh-huh.
But it just sounds like they're laughing.
Yeah. Right.
It's hilarious. And Jock kind of poke him about the whole pregnancy thing.
Yeah.
Which it suggests maybe too there's something up with that marriage.
Yeah,
which I know there is.
I've gotten the feeling that JR was not even concerned about this until Bobby got married, But maybe this does raise something, and his dad needling about it, him about it too. But I like that this scene it seems to show a lot of the relationship between these two, and JR still wanting to get the respect of his dad and everything, and what's going on in his mind, and just Jock still having control over.
He's retired, but not really.
Yeah, he's nominally retired, but he's got the final say, and even it kind of becomes a thing where as we'll see, Bobby trying to maneuver his way into the business or get into the business, partially because of prompting by Pamela, and it's JR doesn't really want him around.
No.
He doesn't want him involved in what he likes Bobby being away on the road and away from him, what he's doing for various reasons.
Right.
But Jock is the one that kind of is more, he's your brother and is more encouraging to let him be part of it.
Yeah, and he actually seems more relaxed about Pam now.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, maybe they do.
Yeah.
Just like each other.
Right.
Yeah, but then when Jock leaves, those flashes of JR being worried and uneasy about all this.
Yeah.
And then Ray comes out of the shadows, also smoking, and JR starts to plot with him. They're gonna run her out of town. Run her out of the ranch. Busted up.
And I like JR says in this conversation, he makes some casual reference to what they did in Waco last year with some other women.
With some married women.
That happens a lot in these early episodes. They make these references to stuff, them carrying on and carousing, and it's just kind of funny. And Ray just kind of gives a knowing smile, like, "Oh yeah,
yeah, right."
Because
Ray expresses qualms about messing with a married woman.
Yeah,
those married women had so much fun with in Waco.
Oh yeah.
And then the next day, Pam drops Bobby off at work, and then she goes to her apartment to pack up her stuff, and Cliff is waiting for her.
Mm-hmm.
I like that he's sitting down on the ground.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem so lawyerly in this scene.
No, he doesn't. You're right.
He is concerned that she would marry a Ewing.
Mm-hmm.
We still don't know the full deal here, but she's like, she loves Bobby, and that's it.
And I like her independence and the fact that we know right away that she's not really like the femme fatale here. She's the hero of this story, actually. And even some of the stuff she was saying earlier to Bobby, it doesn't come off. It's not like she's not Lady Macbeth.
Yeah, exactly.
She thinks he's capable of more and is doing it for him to be more ambitious, not because of her goals.
Yeah, because later on, I guess those episodes with Gary, it seems like Sue Ellen is going to be Lady Macbeth.
Yeah.
With JR, but
and I think Pamela, gets more dimensions and has to kind of go in the mud a little bit more as the show goes on. But I think it's kind of refreshing, especially from a modern viewpoint, going back and watching and saying, okay, she actually is a sincere character and just a good person so far.
Well, and I think too, Cliff talks about how when they were younger, she was breaking windows of viewing buildings and stuff.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And you start to get this picture of them having a tougher childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that compared to Bobby, she's more worldly in terms of understanding what's going on. Bobby seems frustratingly naive.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You're right.
And the whole family is in relation to JR. I don't know if they're naive; they just have a blind spot.
I think until
causing problems again.
I mean, now that you mention it, you're right. Until you get the feeling that until we pick up the story here, Bobby has no idea that JR is manipulating him and keeping out on the road. And now, once he tries to, and then he sees what JR is doing, now it's like his eyes are open, and Pamela sort of inadvertently has exposed him to everything that's going on in the family. It seems like, and maybe he knew enough to know he didn't want to know too. About the stuff.
Yeah, but I'm sure JR was. Well, there's a pretty decent age gap between them.
Yeah,
but I bet he was probably a little bit of a bully.
Could be.
Maybe he bullied Gary.
Yeah, yeah, maybe.
Because Gary seems like he was, had a better relationship with Bobby. But Bobby was pretty young, so I don't know the age gaps exactly. But
yeah, maybe he was too young to really be much of an issue. And Bobby, it seems like Bobby was, like we said, he's self-assured and he has other stuff he could fall back on. Whereas Gary was inherently had some troubles that would be more susceptible to bullying and being driven out of the family.
Right. But I also like the very TV thing where she just pulls a bunch of clothes from her closet on hangers and stuffs them in a suitcase.
Yeah, and then
I'll get a truck.
yeah, I'll get a truck to get the rest of this. It's like, what?
Well, yeah, you're in a Mercedes. And then they go outside, and he's like upset about the car because it's Bobby's, the Ewing car. And then she decides she's gonna go find Digger, their dad, to tell him the news. And first he's like, "Well, I'm not riding in that car." And as soon as she starts to back up, he's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And then there's a scene at Ewing Oil, Bobby trying to get his bearings. He's reading a bunch of files, and he asks Julie, Tina Louise's character, for he needs a combination to the safe because he knows the red files are in the safe, and that means current and important.
Yeah.
And JR is doing his nice guy thing.
Yeah.
Gives him a bunch of files, but holds one back and tells Julie to go put it in his safe deposit box. He's really so condescending when he's being,
It's like everybody.
Like, how could Bobby not see that?
Yeah.
Like, well, little brother, I just, with all that other reading, it's the same thing he pulled on Gary, too. When Gary comes back, he's like, here's a bunch of stuff to read
Yeah.
to drive him away.
Yeah, right.
He does seem to work hard, though. I'll give him that.
Yeah. He plays hard, but he works hard, too.
Yes, yeah. And then Pam and Cliff go to a dive bar. It really is a dive bar.
Yeah.
Like the padding along the bar is all duct taped together and stuff.
Good point, yeah.
But there's this older guy there. He's telling the story. 1930, he and his partner, he followed his nose, and then he and his partner were there. His partner went into town to register their claim, and he drilled. And then when his partner came back, he said the claim was in his name only. And not only did this guy, wasn't he going to get any money, but he owed him some money. And it turns out that the partner was Jock, and this is Digger. He's drunk, but you get to the heart of what the problem between these two families is.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess there's questions about how true it is, but it's certainly how he saw it. And he's an alcoholic, and Pam tells him what's going on, that she married Bobby, and it takes him a little bit to process it, and then his eyes go wide and weird and crazy.
Yeah.
She leaves in tears.
Yeah, there's going to be problems with Digger and the Ewings. It's just there's a big history there.
Yeah.
It's very Romeo and Juliet-esque.
And he does say he tried to kill Jock a couple times, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't kill, but he could drill.
Yeah, and he's not in good shape. I mean, again, you kind of see this background. I mean, Pamela has this big glamorous look, but like you said, they hinted at her background, and she's got this father that in some circumstances she could be ashamed of, and so it's interesting.
Yeah,
makes her character a little interesting, I think.
Yeah, and I think later episodes we learn they were raised by their aunt. And back at home, Sue Ellen and Miss Ellie are setting up for a dinner party or something. Pam offers to help, and Sue Ellen just ices her out.
Yeah, it's like a shunning almost.
Yeah, we've got our system or whatever she says. And then Lucy comes down the stairs, and tells her the whole story of her parents, or the story she knows, which is that Gary was a drunk like your daddy, and got a 15-year-old girl pregnant with her, and then would leave a lot and would beat her mom, and then one day he left, and then the mom left with Lucy, but JR sent some goons, and they found some good old boys, and they found her and brought Lucy home and told the mom Val to never come back into the state of Texas. Yeah. The whole state of Texas.
Yeah. Gosh. It's a lot of ground.
And the truth that we learn later on is that he drove her away. And he kind of drove Gary away. I mean, Gary did leave. In part, I think, at least, because he knew he wasn't, almost as a way to protect them. Yeah. Because he knew he was.
That's what his thinking was, I think. Yeah, I agree.
And then he leaves again in those episodes, and he tries to buy off the mom again.
Yeah. It's their thing.
And it doesn't even seem to be a reason. He just thinks she's trash, I guess.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Right.
She's not good enough to be
in the family.
I don't think he wants his brothers to be happy.
No, I think you're right.
Because he's probably not.
Right. And you mentioned earlier, like that past of Pam's. Yeah. They allude to. Maybe it's gives her a little bit more empathy for Lucy. Lucy, in a way, I mean, she's kind of has mixed motives, it seems like, but at least she's like through these early episodes, she's sort of like the one woman there, girl who's sort of willing to acknowledge her. Yeah. And it seems like maybe they're drawn to a little bit to each other because they have sort of similar backgrounds, and Pamela knows what it's like to have like that kind of unstable childhood and treats her a little bit differently.
Right. Like the second episode is really focused on her, Pam, trying to give a firm hand to Lucy because no one else will.
Right.
And at the end of the scene, Lucy, you ain't got a chance, lady.
Yeah.
And then there's a scene with Bobby and Pam in their bedroom that night, and you can tell she's just feeling really isolated and unsure about everything. And then JR pops in.
Yeah.
That's why you don't live in a
Found out.
house.
Yeah, exactly.
He needs Bobby to go to Austin right away.
Yeah.
I imagine he was standing outside listening for a while,
I
listening
think
for
you're-
the perfect
I
moment.
think you're right. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, and Bobby like protests. He's like, "Nope,
Yep.
gotta be right. we need you to do this."
Just until the hearings are over.
Yeah.
And Bobby said, "Oh, it's family. What can I say?" And
Yeah.
she's like, "No."
Well, his specialty is distributing the 3 B's we
Yes.
found earlier: booze, broads, and booty. I think it was booze, broads, and booty. Yeah.
Aren't 2 of those B's the same thing?
Well, I guess it depends on your.
Or is booty money?
I'm thinking booty is
like
probably
treasure.
money and
Okay.
material goods.
I mean, this is the disco era.
Yeah.
And the next morning, there's a little scene. JR and Ray are standing outside just chatting. And Pam walks by, and JR, just out of the, kindness, and he just thought of it. Like, oh, well, Ray's going up in the helicopter. Why don't you go up with him?
Yeah.
Really see the place.
Yeah.
And she kind of, well, okay. And then Bobby comes out and looking for Pam, and JR's like, I don't know, I haven't seen her. And they go off. I guess JR is going to Austin too. That was a little unclear, but they drive off together. And then Ray and Pam are in the helicopter and talking, and we learn a little more stuff that the ranch part belonged to Miss Ellie's dad. He left it to Jock, but with the provision that Jock continue to have it as a cattle ranch, not drill oil there.
I believe some storylines later contradict this.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure what the official thing is, but yeah.
But he's like, Jock's really grown to love it. Sees himself as a cowboy. And Pam's feeling a little sorry for herself. And Ray lands near a pond. Then JR and Bobby are driving, and JR suddenly pulls off the road to do something distasteful but necessary.
Yeah, it's funny. He's like, he doesn't really say what it is, but he's like, I got to do something. We got to do this.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if there's a pretense here, but
Right.
it's hard to tell if he's like saying, I know this is going to happen. I hate to do it. Or if he's even bothering to act like he cares about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, but no good will come of it though.
Yeah. And Ray and Pam have a little heart to heart, and I mean, he's trying to woo her and talk about, maybe like people should stay together, be with like people, and then he ends up scooping her up and jumping in the pond with her, which is like freezing.
Yeah.
A bit bold. Also, it has a dock, so I guess that pond maybe doesn't have cows near it, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
And because it's TV, she reacts like playfully.
Yeah.
Instead of just being totally outraged
Right.
and annoyed with him.
Yeah. So they go to the shack that's nearby, and there's a fire going. He's made some coffee. He's shirtless. She's wrapped up in a blanket. Certainly doesn't look great. And then there's a car approaching, and she looks out the window and can see that it's JR and Bobby, and she puts it all together.
Yeah, she realizes
Like
right
that
away
too.
what's going on.
She's smart.
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
She's like, oh, this is a setup.
Yeah. Yep.
And Ray's sort of like, Steve Canale has a good oops look.
Yeah.
His face is really good. But she, and I don't know I wonder if that's like there was a scene that got cut, because she's like, well, Lucy told me all about you and her, so she's able to blackmail him.
Yeah, I guess she had seen them and maybe confronted Lucy about it.
Something, yeah.
Yeah.
And Bobby come in, and JR starts to say something like, Bobby, if I were you, and Pam's like, if I were you, I'd shut up. And she kind of explains it all, and Bobby stands up to JR.
Mm-hmm.
I put for now, because every episode I've seen, he ends up caving.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you got to sustain that, but it does seem like he has a weak spot for JR shenanigans.
He is, and he's deferring to him. It seems like he defers to him on like a lot of family and business kind of things.
Yeah.
I think he does respect JR. I think he knows JR is doing shady stuff, but I think he thinks JR is a shrewd businessman and has, Jock's ear and everything. But to his credit, I think the one thing he doesn't always stand up to JR, but it's a little bit different when Pam's involved.
Yeah.
Like he takes Pam's side, and that it seems like it'll take a while, but he's getting to the point where, Pam will take precedence over even like the Ewing stuff. And
and he kind of says something like that here, like, she's a Ewing, but more important, she's my wife, and this won't happen again.
Yeah, right. But I mean, his perspective though still is to get her into the Ewings, not to to have them both separate, but to integrate her into this Ewing world.
Right.
And that's his real goal, is to make her be like a Ewing wife.
Yeah. And after they leave, Ray kind of apologizes to JR for messing things up.
Yeah.
And JR is just looking at it like, well, I underestimated our newest family member, or our newest Ewing. Well, I surely won't do that again. And then that's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
I think it's a really strong pilot.
I do too.
It really establishes the major conflicts, the characters.
and it does so in an interesting way. Like
Yeah.
the whole story was engaging. I mean, it has some like timeless themes, but because of like the performances and like what's going on, how clear the writing is, it hooked me in right away. Yeah, a textbook example of how to set up a series, I think. You're right, it's all there. And even some things that aren't necessarily shown, they establish things, and they, most importantly, they make you want to come back next week and see where this is all going.
Yeah, and I did at least watch the next episode.
Yeah.
Which was, that was
Yeah.
the one was focused a lot on Lucy, but it was more Pam trying to establish herself in the family.
Yeah, and this is something that I've skipped around a little bit. Like, first of all, I watched like a episode from the last season, and yeah, like the music is different. The characters, it seems more like a conventional nighttime soap. I like here. I kind of like just like you said, kind of like the grounding of it. It's like family stuff, but there's also like the ranch, the oil, and this just the stuff in the offices. Like even like the office dynamics of JR and Bobby are kind of interesting.
Right, yeah.
It's just kind of cool that they have these different, but I mean, that's another interesting thing about it is you got the different settings, you got the oil field, you got the cattle, and you got the boardroom and the family. As long as JR is involved somehow, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be worth watching, I think.
Yeah. Now I'm not going to watch 357 episodes.
You know?
But I might watch some of these first few seasons.
Yeah, I think I'm very curious. I definitely want to watch the first couple seasons, and I want to watch. I've seen some of the Who Shot JR stuff, but I want to see it in context, like having with the build up and everything like that.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, and a lot of these characters do stay more or less over the course of the season, and it declined a little bit the last couple seasons, but it stayed on top, and then if not number one, a big hit for many years. You got to give it credit for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of interested in seeing more of it, and yeah, JR is great, but I found myself surprised by how interested I am in some of the other characters. I thought when I kind of first started watching Dallas, it's like, well, it's like the JR show, but it's a true ensemble, and everybody's bringing something. And I think even like Miss Ellie becomes like, she's not quite what you might expect at the beginning of the series and everything like that.
I mean, I'm curious about her, like how much she knows about, some of the business dealings.
Yeah.
Does she really have does she really just have a blind spot, or is she, I mean, she talks about Lucy like that, like she just doesn't know how to deal with her.
Yeah.
She knows she should be being stronger, but she's not. But yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I like the acting. So I'm interested, although there's one season where she had health problems.
That's right, and they had another...
Who is it?
Donna Reed?
Donna Reed.
Yeah, which seems totally bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think, I mean, all the supporting characters or actors are good.
And they might have had some ambiguity too, and some things would happen later that would sort of change it. But yeah, overall, they knew pretty much right away where a lot of this was going.
Yeah.
And had the characters very well established. I think maybe like with Miss Ellie in particular, I think I don't know this, but I'll bet that they didn't tell her a lot, and they had her play it a little bit more ambiguous. Now,
These early episodes, I don't like Sue Ellen at all.
No.
She's just mean.
Yeah, just flat out mean and selfish.
Yeah.
And there's not much, redeeming to her early on. And then I think later what helps is just JR is such a jerk.
Heel, yeah.
That it's like, wow, well, she may have done some bad things, but she's married to this guy. That's got to be tough.
Yeah. He's more than a heel, right? He's an outright villain.
I think so. And that's another weird thing about watching some of the later episodes is it's not like they babyface him totally.
Yeah.
But like there's storylines and you kind of see like where he becomes more vulnerable and things happen to him. And it's like, I guess there's a value in seeing him scheme his way out of things. But, really, I don't know if you could do it for 14 straight seasons, but you want him to kind of be the manipulator and the guy that people are coming after. But they get into some pretty wild stuff later on.
Yeah.
But really, I think they were probably, I'm imagining that they were trying to find ways to keep him relevant, doing the same thing after 14 years. And and as you're going into the 80s and you do have questions about like, okay, how is an independent oil manufacturer going to survive?
Right.
With oil prices going up and down and things like that. And what would happen to them in real life?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even know what that is. Exactly. Now, did you know in our area of the country there is a Ewing Oil? You may have seen their trucks before.
Oh yeah, I think I have.
So I looked that up. I mean, they've been around, I don't know, since the 60s.
Okay.
But so, I mean, they do fuel oil, but they also deliver oil to gas stations, and then they have Liberty gas stations are actually Ewing.
Oh really?
Oil. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I didn't know. I kind of assumed Liberty gas stations are owned by a foreign entity.
Yeah, one of those trying too hard.
Yes. Yeah.
Like with the biggest display on the 4th of July,
Right. Yeah. Apparently not.
Who supplies Texaco stations? I guess Texaco.
They used to.
Yeah.
Not around anymore. Bit of trivia.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Yeah. Is there a Southfork Ranch out in this part of the country?
I don't think
I would like
so.
to visit that.
It's a northeast fork.
Yeah.
Isn't I think the actual one it's like a tourist site or something.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Should be pretty cool. Pretty cool visit. Maybe we'll do a road trip episode someday. We go to
Right.
go to a site like that.
Yeah. We talked about going to the Walton's house, I think.
Yeah.
Or the real house, or whatever that is. There's a museum or something.
Well, yeah, it was a lot of fun revisiting Dallas, and this whole season 11 has been a lot of fun, Mike. I think Player Card's right. Maybe we'll get to 14 seasons.
Oh, maybe.
We'll do
I don't know if
some
we'll get to
special-
350.
Yeah, I was gonna say for our 357th episode, we have to do a special. That's when we'll go visit Southfork
Yeah.
for our 357th milestone episode.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of joked earlier about how this being our most interactive season, but we got some new voices recommending shows and some of our familiar friends of the show. But yeah, good deal this season. We had polls and people participating, and we like to keep the conversation going up to the baddies, of course. I'm sure there'll be some listener involvement in that, and through the off season and whatever comes next, and before you know it, we'll be back with the 12th season, and we actually already have a lot of.
I think we do, right?
I can't promise we'll have as much activity
Right.
as far as show selection next season, because I think we've already got a lot of kind of on the books as ones we've committed to. So
That's right. We've already promised to.
yeah,
So
that's right. We'll have some surprises along the way, and join us at our Facebook group. Just search Battle of the Network Shows and come there, and love to have you talk about this. You can always visit us at battleofthenetworkshows.com.
Yeah.
Email us mailbag at battleofthenetworkshows.com with comments, suggestions, anything. And as Mike said, you can visit our store on TeePublic.
it's all right. The Starship Enterprise just crashed.
Yes. There's all kinds of stuff going on here. But what we're trying to say is thanks for a great season 11.
Yes.
And stay with us, and we'll have a raucous Batty Awards coming up soon, I'm sure.
Right.
This episode brought to you by 20-gallon hats. 10 gallons for your head, 10 more for your ego. This episode also brought to you by Thick and Rich Texas Tea. This episode also brought to you by Larry Hagman's BVDs. Remember when that was a thing? Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Battle of the Network Shows.